Welcome to the CTC Curse Remedy. Today's day is June 17, 2026. My name is Chung Wun Lam. Pretty much, I just basically for the last weeks of time, I've been giving myself a break from the adversities in my life, the pain and misery in my life, in general, those things, because of what like the 2 days incidents that went in a very close period of time, like just weeks of time. I had like 2 days, and it was so kind of like in a way, pretty much, it's just like a setup, pretty much like that. I felt that it's just someone like just I don't know, maybe it's just like I just been wanting to for many years of time, maybe get that acknowledgement. Maybe it's just a big misunderstanding, and I have like, could I get like a diplomatic immunity to this big misunderstanding? That's what I'm trying to, achieve at. Why would I kind of like in a way, why did this happen to me? It's like why out of nowhere, for no reason, this happened to me. Like, all of a sudden the whole San Diego won't acknowledge me, and all this adversity is happening to me almost daily. Kind of like in a way, like, so for many years of times been just trying to say maybe it's just big misunderstanding, and I could have a diplomatic immunity to this big misunderstanding, sort of, just having, just to avoid the blames. It's like, why all of a sudden, for no reason, this happened to me? And anyway, like recently, I also been watching the Game of Thrones, and there was one episode on season 7, the first episode. It was like Arya Stark from the House of Stark, like her family. There were family members in her family that was killed, and so like she have her revenge, but she did it like alone. She's like sort of like still at, like just a, even though she have went through a lot and a lot of training and everything, but overall, like her overall appearance still like just a girl, like in a way, and then the stereotype in the society on a girl by herself and things like that. And it was just like, so like in a way, she have her revenge on the Frey house. And like after she have her revenge on the Frey house, and remember she was telling one of the Frey house members, just kind of like in a way, just say what happened here. Winter came for the Frey house Frey slash Frey house. So kind of like in a way, like I was just saying that, you know, um, maybe winter came for me, but it's been so long already. Just like what really going on. Why the whole San Diego, no one would. So I just want to say, maybe just big misunderstanding instead of even, but like I was saying, Aya Stock, maybe person who's having revenge on me doesn't have that sort of name like Aya Stock, couldn't just say what the motive is, like even though she's like a girl by herself and everything, but she have able to say her motive, winter came for the house of Frey, even for a girl by herself able to do that is like, and who's doing this to me? Why couldn't that person reveal himself or herself? It's like, anyway, so like I was saying, that's why I just want to keep it a big misunderstanding. Just kind of like in a way, I mean, probably like I think if anyone who seen that episode, season 7, episode 1, where Aya Stark by herself, a young girl, so like in her probably just still maybe at the end of her teenage years and still considered as a young person, able to have a revenge by herself, also that stereotype of a girl and all of that, so I think if anyone who's seen that episode would seems like maybe it's really hard to believe that a girl could do all of that, it's a really hard to believe episode. And so anyway, especially like my my situation, it's like for many years just wanted to have a feedback on my PTTS blog, on my YouTube channel, maybe try to be, making that first step, first things first, just like, it's just, kind of like in a way I felt maybe, like I'm saying, just hopefully just some kind of feedback, like just like maybe a feedback that is a really cruel feedback, like the world is very cruel, anyone who show a tiny bit of decency will be treated like how I've been treated, just they cannot have any decency exist in this world. This is a very cruel world we live in, something like that, it's like, so I felt like, when I get run over by a car, felt it's gonna happen sooner or later, at this rate. I don't know, like, just still shocked that a car haven't run me over yet. It's been already many years, just the whole San Diego wouldn't leave me a feedback on my PTTS blog or YouTube channel for, it's been like around 9 years already, from 2016 until now, 2026. So I felt like, in those years of time, I probably suppose we already got run over by cars, and, like the whole city wouldn't even acknowledge me. So I felt that, anyway, like I was saying, been trying to just keep it at a big misunderstanding, and wanted to have a diplomatic immunity to this big misunderstanding. So they're trying, put goal that doesn't, I'm the victim, so try to make goal that, instead of creating more problems is to me, I'm already the victim. This is not normal, it's just why all of a sudden, like, no one would acknowledge me in San Diego. It's like I'm a victim. I'm not. It's just really tough. Like one person, all of a sudden, the whole city wouldn't. So kind of like, like I felt either the anger and frustration and hatred, all of that was gonna kill me. It's like, and whoever run me over, uh, you know, in a car and kill me at the scene, it's an act of mercy. They sort of like in a way I felt this very cruel world we live in. Try to make. That's why I try to focus on the big misunderstanding to avoid that this is just very cruel world we live in. So anyway, like I was saying that act of mercy or just for any reason got run over by a car and felt that I would die with a lot of anger and hatred about a very cruel world we live in. So pretty much, like I was saying, that feedback, that that one feedback, just like the example showing, saying, saying it earlier, that you know, this is a very cruel world we live in. Anyone show a tiny bit of decency will be treated like how I've been treated, like a feedback like that. I think when I got hit by a car, die at the scene, wouldn't die with so much anger and hatred in me. Nevertheless, it's just sort of like in a way. I'm not saying that, like, I'm just saying if someone did come upon, like, because it's just recently I have been keep giving myself a break that a miracle could happen to me. A person could come upon my PTTS blog or my YouTube channel and leave me a feedback on my PTTS blog or my YouTube channel. So I have been giving me that break recently. I've been saying that. So I'm just saying that could happen. So I don't know, like maybe you just have to prove me wrong, by showing me some evidence that until you did do that, I'm gonna go with that. So just just I'm saying, that's part of communication skill and things like that. Anyway, like I'm saying, so until someone prove me wrong with some evidence, I'm gonna give myself that break. And so seeing that break that I gave myself, just so there is that chance that someone could come upon my PTT's blog or my YouTube channel and would see, like how society could make a person so like like no one would acknowledge and so unimportant, so insignificant, and then on the other side, that episode, season 7, episode 1 on the Game of Thrones TV series, where Arya Stark, by herself was able to have revenge for her family against the Frey house. So House Frey against House Frey. So like I was just saying, how society just like how insignificant a person could be, and on the other hand, like just a girl could able to accomplish all of that. And anyway, like I'm saying, so just been hanging on to that break that gave myself. Nevertheless, so pretty much, well, for any person who felt that there is some sort of purpose in this world, there is some sort of noble cause, purpose, or any kind of meaning in general, that any person felt that there's still those things left in this world, then just I just hopefully just a big misunderstanding, that the person going to end up like me, gonna be ignore the whole city's gonna ignore that person and gonna make that person world into a very cruel world to live in and things like that. So it's just like, just hopefully person doesn't have to end up like in my situation and things like that. Pretty much like each day just full of anger and hatred, it's just like why the world is very cruel, and why any person show any tiny bit of decency have to be treated like a very cruel punishment and all of that. It's like, how did the world become like this? Anyway, so I don't know, like each morning when I wake up, just these thoughts, and it's like, just want to, just either really the anger, like, so just want to calm my anger and hatred, and which at the same time it's just like, what if, say, just one wrong morning, just got in a really bad mood, that's why like each morning have to really stay, like have some sort of meditation going on to able to calm all this anger and hatred. But it's just saying, one, like the example, that's why like I was pointing, like during that 2 day period, like if something like that happened. But like that's why like I would during that 3 period been making these videos, is talking about, to try to calm myself and have some sort of meditation going on, just like I was just saying, just what if just one wrong morning, just wake up and just couldn't calm myself, and I felt it would be very, probably gonna die with a lot of anger and hatred and all of that. So it's like, that's why it's something, like I was saying, feedback, that this is a very cruel world we live in. Anyone show any tiny bit of decency will be treated like how I've been treated. And back on 1997, during my middle school year, I was awarded the President Award for having the top grades in all my classes. So like I was saying, like what if there's some a person like that still exists in this world, like, and then all of a sudden that person see a crowd of people burning another person at the stake, and So kind of like in a way, you know, it's just like sort of like a very sudden changes, you know, the change from still believing that there is still some decency in the world, and then all of a sudden, you know, find out that the world is a very cruel world, you know, just like a crowd of people burning another person at the stake. And so kind of like in a way, you know, this sudden change from, you know, like having the president of war still thinking that there's some decency in the world, and then all of a sudden seeing like a crowd of people burning up another person at the stake. And it's like, and find out that the world is a very cruel world, and that person with the president of war would return back to his house and start shouting at his parent for hiding the truth from him and torn his president of war to pieces. You know, why would you hide the truth about the world's a very cruel world to me and force me to have the president of war and all of that? So, you know, it's like, you know, about like the parent would shout back at the child, you know, it's like, because we know you will behave like that. You know, you're gonna be full of anger and hatred about being about you've been the truth's been hidden from you and all of that. You know, it's like nevertheless, I don't think a middle school student have the because I remember I've been like I was saying, you know, I was once also a middle school student, so I kind of know what it's like and all of that. So I felt probably they don't have like what I'm the life experience I have right now. So pretty much think would you know maybe probably won't able to do what I'm doing right now. You know to able to calm myself from the anger and hatred and all of that. Anyway, because my situation for the it's been many years already and been trying to like I was saying, you know, emphasize on it's a big misunderstanding and hopefully it could have some sort of diplomatic immunity to this big misunderstanding. So a lot of emphasis on like the seriousness of the situations. So you know, there's just been struggling very hard to not bring up the word joke. You know, it's like because of the seriousness of my situation. So you know, anyway, I can't help it that it's it's like a joke. You know, it's like each morning I wake up, you know, it's like the city of San Diego is burning me at the stake and I have to self-help myself. You know, it's like a joke, you know, it's like how could you self-help yourself? The whole San Diego is burning you at the stake, you know, you're gonna make yourself very angry and full of hatred. You're being burned at the stake by the whole San Diego. How are you gonna self-help yourself? You know, it's just like the crowd of people watching the comedian would applaud the comedian, and they also, you know, the comedian would get paid for making those jokes and things like that. Growing up, the time I would hear my older brother Ho Hung Lam, he would say that, that he wanted to set his goal on becoming a comedian when he grow up and things like that. And anyway, pretty much, I suppose, I don't know, now talking about it, it look pretty obvious that when a joke is on you, you don't think it's that funny. Yet, each morning / each day, that break that I've been giving myself, that if a miracle could happen to me, a person could come upon my PTTS blog or my YouTube channel and leave me a feedback on my PTTS blog or my YouTube channel and would save me a lot of pain and misery. So, in a way, like, I know it is like a joke for a person being burned at the stake, trying to self-help himself. It's like a joke, but it anyway, I have to pause the video to fold my folding bed away. Okay, back to what I'm saying. So anyway, I didn't say I want to be a comedian when I grow up like my older brother Ho Hung Lam, but I but saying that each morning I wake up and I'm being burned by this San Diego, the whole all, pretty much like the whole city of San Diego is burning me at the stake each morning, and I'm in a lot of. So I'm self-helping myself, to ease the anger and hatred in me. Saying these things would make me like, telling a joke or something, but like I'm just saying, but I didn't say that I want to be a comedian like my older brother, but saying these things so that I would know why I'm so full of anger and hatred in me, because I'm being burned at the stake by the whole city of San Diego, and I have to struggle to self-help myself from being burned at the stake. So in a way, even though I didn't say I want to be a comedian when I grow up like my older brother, but saying these things, I could see why I have all this anger and hatred in me. Anyway, the purpose on burning a person at the stake is to want that person to be in pain. So my struggle to self-help myself from being burned at the stake would, kind of like in a way, like I know there's gonna be a lot of pain involved. Back then, when my older brother Ho Hung Lam said that he wanted to be a comedian when he grow up, thought when he have that position as a comedian, I would probably work at the ticket booth to his show, like selling ticket to the audience, to the people who want to come to watch his show, and also, handing out flyers for people to know, to want to come to watch his show and things like that. So I felt probably that's something I would do, like, just probably work at the ticket booth, selling ticket for people to come watch his show, and or handing out flyers to people to come watch his show and things like that. Because growing up, our family is victim of the 1975 to 1978 war and have inferior background, so life is very hard for us. So I felt like if my older brother could achieve his goal, I would do that for him. It's like be working in the ticket booth to sell tickets for people to come watch his show, and or handing out flyers, for people to come watch his show, and then saying, just nevertheless, I didn't say I want to be a comedian when I grow up like my older brother. But around 2005, after my older sister, Lin Hong Lam, after she told me multiple times that she had contemplation on commit suicide, and so coincident she also got into multiple car accident, and then months later she passed away in a car accident. So I was just thinking maybe to be a private investigator on commit suicide cases, just like maybe probably too hard for my older brother to achieve his goal as a comedian. Probably won't be working at the ticket booths or handing out flyers to his show and things like that. So I probably thought maybe like a private investigator who commit suicide cases. Anyway, to save myself the pain from continued talking about being burned at the stake by the city of San Diego, and I'm trying to self-help myself, saying like, an act of mercy while I'm riding my bicycle to the North Claremont Branch Library. A person made an act of mercy, like run me over in a car and kill me at the scene. That would consider as saving me from being burned at the stake, instead of letting me self-help myself from being burned at the stake. Anyway, I could vibe the following argument. Like, to some people, like I'm helping out my brother by selling ticket in the ticket booths, or I'm helping my older sister by doing private investigation cases on commit suicide. When I needed help the most, would argue as I'm being burned at the stake. It's like, so kind of like in a way, that's why, the city of San Diego is burning me at the stake, because I want to be burned at the stake. Anyway, like I'm just saying that just that's how I grow up, like whenever a person done something wrong or committed some kind of crime, people will tell that person, what crime they committed and give them punishments and things like that. So I felt like, if I'm being burned, that's why like I just like that wanting to know why I'm being burned at the stake, it's like so it's just that it's really hard for me to struggle against this why I'm being burned at the stake. And it kind of ruined the purpose, it's like, people going through all this trouble to be burned me at the stake and they're gonna ruin it by telling me why why they're burning me at the stake. It's like anyway, like I'm saying, I think this struggle against why I'm being burned at the stake, and just like it's all these different struggle in the world. Even just the struggle to become a comedian when you grow up, or just any kind of struggle. It's just it makes more sense than struggling to know why you're being burned at stake. Why you have to be like that? It's like, why couldn't there be a better struggle? It's just like, it's just like, why is the world so cruel? It's like all this cruelty will only create more cruelty. Why the world is just cruel, and all this cruelty is going to make the world even, just gonna destroy the world and everything. It's like anyway, my family is the victim of the 1975 to 1978 war and have inferior background. It felt like it's already it's kind of like that's our life. The very hard struggle is equivalent living in a very cruel world. Just like why couldn't I just accept that? It's like pretty much that is not an argument. It's like why couldn't I accept that? Why I have to argue that I'm being burned at the stake, just instead of accepting that that's that's just how life going to be like for a person who's in a family that is victim of the war and have inferior background. That's just life is gonna be very hard, and it's just like why I have to see it like I'm being burned at the stake. So I felt maybe that's the argument. That's why. Anyway, just something like that. I'll kind of leave me a feedback like that. If you felt that's the argument you felt you have against me. Because something like that. It's like okay. Anyway, sorry that I the harder I struggle against being try to self help myself, being burned at the stake, the more anger and hatred I have. It's just like because being burned at the stake is just a very painful thing. Is anyway. So each time it's just that's pretty much that's why I give myself that break that a miracle could happen to me. So a person could come upon my PTTS blog on my YouTube channel and would leave me a feedback on my PTTS blog or YouTube channel and would save me a lot of pain and misery. So I've been saying that a lot recently, and because that's what I wanted, just that reason why I'm being burned at the stake. Just to know that, even though being burned at the stake is a very painful thing, but just wanted to know that, it's like felt because that's just part of how I grow up, it's like you committed a crime, you did something wrong, people will tell you about it and then give you the punishment for it. It's how it's been grow up. That's how the life I live. So I've been giving myself that break a lot, been saying that a lot, and so it is very hard for me each time to make these videos is where I talk about my situation and also the articles I wrote about my situation because I want to know why, why I'm being burned at the stake because this is part of how I grow up and how I've been living my life. So it is very hard each time I make one of these videos where I speak in front of the camcorder or write an article about my situation because I wanted to know why I'm being burned at the stake. Okay, so if I have anything else I want to add to this video, I will add to the next video. Thank you for following PTTS. Thank you for joining the PTTS. I'm going to end this video in 3, 2, 1.